On the 4th of July in 1976, hundreds of Lebanon citizens attended the grand opening celebration of a new park. They were asked to wear colonial-style clothing, bake 200 cakes with 200 candles to light at the night in honor of the nation's bicentennial, and bring a bell whose ringing would signify the opening of Lebanon's largest park. That's how this park, Colonial Park, now the home for hundreds of youth baseball and softball players, got its start. By 1840, a reservoir was constructed north of downtown Lebanon to supply the water for the Warren County Canal, which connected Lebanon to Middletown and provided its merchants a flow of trade to the Miami and Erie Canal and eventually the Ohio River. The canal, however, lasted less than 10 years. It was constantly plagued by the accumulation of silt from the farm fields west of Lebanon that made canal boat passage nearly impossible. On Monday, July 10, 1882, after 2 days of torrential rain, 2 small breaks in the reservoir flood wall became one large 70-foot hole, sending a rush of water into Lebanon that swept away everything in its path. An article in that week's Western Star newspaper described the damage done to the bridge that once stood in front of where Barry Intermediate School is today, stating, "A torrent struck the iron bridge with a velocity that hurled it on higher ground across the stream, but fortunately did not smash it to pieces." In 1898, the French Brothers Dairy opened a creamery on the property that once held Lebanon's reservoir. At its peak, the creamery could churn out 500 pounds of butter a day. The creamery operated until the 1960s, when it was abandoned, paving the way for the city's purchase of the land for a park. Things didn't really start happening until 1971. Plans were made at the time, provided for a green space that would include playgrounds, ball diamonds, a fishing lake, teen center, and more. Over 140 acres of land was acquired, and the southern entrance to the park, its first, was completed just in time for its 1976 grand opening. While many of the plans were never realized, Colonial Park did come to life with nature trails that were completed in 1977. It may surprise you, as it did Dave Ware, an Ohio-certified volunteer naturalist, that those trails still exist. Something he discovered early in the spring of 2015 when he walked the French Run Trail.
It'd been a long winter and I was ready to get out of the house and look for signs of spring. Didn't know there was a trail here, so I walked out of the parking lot, across the lawn, and went down into the woods, which had a steep-sided ravine just inside the tree line, and found French Run, the creek, which is a tributary of Turtle Creek and the Little Miami River. And I followed that downstream a ways until I got tired, and I thought I'll go back to the car. And when I came up out of that creek bed, there was a sign that said French Run Trail, and there was a trail right here at the top of the creek bed that I didn't know existed. The first thing I found was wildflowers coming up that this year were late. I, in past years, would have expected to see them in February, and with our long, never-ending winter, they didn't come up until March. So I was finding harbinger of spring coming up, which is also called salt and pepper because it's a plant with black and white blooms. I saw blue phlox coming up, and I saw large beds of trout lilies here in Colonial Park. Here lately I've seen appendaged waterleaf blooming. It's a beautiful blue flower. I've seen some celandine, lesser celandine, which is a brilliant yellow waxy flower about 1 inch in diameter. Actually, they would consider it an invasive, but it's only spotty here in the park, so not a problem. It's more attractive than anything. Whenever I've been here, it's been flowing just a few gallons a minute. I suppose if we have heavy precipitation, it may come out of its banks a little bit, but generally it looks like it's a normal groundwater drainage system for the area. It runs gin clear. I turned some rocks over in the creek and I found numerous kinds of macroinvertebrates, which are aquatic insects. And I looked a little farther and I found 2 kinds of fish in the creek, which is amazing this far up in the headwaters away from the Little Miami. They're small fish, about 3 inches long. Darters is one kind, and there's a species of minnow that lives in the creek and schools up. You can see them. They're eating those macroinvertebrates. I also found salamanders. The two-lined salamander lives in the creek. It's a beautiful animal, about 3 or 4 inches long, gold body, a black stripe on each side of its flanks. This means we have clean water here in Lebanon. The fossils that we find in this area are, according to scientific theory, 450 million years old. And the most of them that we find are from the old Ordovician Sea, which is non-existent now, but 450 million years ago, our bedrock that is now Ohio was below the equator, about as far south as we are north of the equator now. And the shifting tectonic plates brought that old seabed up to Ohio, where it now is, covered with glacial till in most places. But old earthquakes have buckled the land and brought that Ordovician seabed to the surface, where we see it exposed a few places, including right here along French Run and Turtle Creek, the North Fork. There are some real neat exposures, and I've seen evidence of brachiopods, fossils, and crinoid stems, and I even found a large cephalopod, which was a creature like a cuttlefish today, or a squid. It was a predator of the Ordovician Sea, and it was the biggest cephalopod that I've found, a big fat one, and I put it in my fossil collection. French Run joins with the North Fork of Turtle Creek. Both of these streams are old drainage areas from probably originated back in glacial times, and they've worked their way through the glacial till and exposed some bedrock where you have cascades and drop-offs in the bedrock, and the water actually cascades and falls sometimes many feet, and we have little waterfalls as we go downstream to the main stem of Turtle Creek. You can hear them, you can see gushing water. They're just small, miniature Niagara Falls. They're beautiful, they're common in Warren County, and we have several in this park. They're very worth photographing, and again, that's a good place to listen to the water babble on its way downstream to eventually the Ohio River. It's just a beautiful place to come and see scenery. The creek itself, without falls, has fallen logs across it. It has glacial erratics in it, which are big granite boulders that the glaciers brought down 15,000 years ago and left here. They're not native to Ohio. So interesting things in the stream, just scenery, geology, and nature of all kinds.
Visitors to Colonial Park West on North Broadway and Colonial Park East on Monroe Road can't help but notice the beautiful memorial tree walk. Jack Hedges was a city council member and mayor of Lebanon at the time that the tree walk was started.
Lebanon, City of Lebanon was interested in becoming a Tree City USA, which we did. And they had certain requirements in order to do that. We had to have a tree ordinance, and we had to have a tree program. So the memorial or dedicated tree walk evolves from becoming a Tree City USA. Three things come immediately to mind from this type program. Is number one, it's a way, in a lasting way, to remember and honor a loved one, a family member, or close friend. Very, very important. Also, aesthetically, for the parks and things, it's neat. And the third reason that comes to mind is ecology. I mean, trees cleanse our air and make our lives better, and so the aesthetics so I think it's a great program, and I think it's continuing to grow, and hopefully will continue to grow long into the future. And we can always find a place to plant more trees.
Colonial Park North on Monroe Road features picnic areas, a playground, and a basketball court built by the donation of the Harmon Civic Trust. But it is Colonial Park West and Colonial Park East where all the action is. Over 800 children participate in the youth baseball and softball programs that have their home at Colonial Park. Colonial Park East has a permanent concession stand, restroom facilities, batting cages, and picnic facilities that enhance the experience on its 4 ball diamonds.
The park itself is crucial for us to be able to facilitate all of our practices, games obviously, but perhaps most importantly, it is a huge attraction for teams coming from the outside. We run tournaments where we have teams from all over Southwest Ohio, even branching out into the Columbus area. And the fact that this park offers so many things for the families and children that come here, there's a lot of green space for them to set up picnic type events, just a lot of space for people to roam and enjoy softball and baseball in a large, expansive environment.
When you walk through the front gates of this place, you are surrounded by trees. There is no car noise, there is no traffic noise, and you really feel like you're in a quaint setting, and the only thing to do here is to play baseball. I think the facilities themselves are maintained pretty well. Even when you go over to the west fields, again, it's away from the beaten path. There's not much distraction except for you're there to play the game of baseball. And not too many parks around here are like that.
As you travel around and see other facilities, one of the things you immediately see is the quality of our fields. The quality, even something as simple as the backstops. When you look at the backstops here at Colonial East and Colonial West, you see how high they are. You go to some other fields where there's a multi-field complex and the backstops are half as high. Very dangerous, quite frankly. When you're trying to watch a game and your back's to other fields, the balls are just flying, and you see, on a regular basis, you see people getting hit, ducking balls. That's key. The ability we had with the city to partner to build our batting cages over here, that's a huge advantage to us. No, very rarely you see other recreational complexes where the kids have access to batting cages. That's huge for us when we look at rainouts, weather issues. We're able to get kids work all through the year, not necessarily on dirt when it's unplayable, and we can continue to improve their skills.
The City of Lebanon and its youth leagues have formed a successful partnership to handle the various duties associated with running a sports league.
We maintain all of the administrative burden of doing the registrations, scheduling, hiring umpires, all of those things. And then we really look for the city to obviously provide the facility and then partner with us for maintenance purposes.
But when it comes to improvements and things like that, it's really up to us as a board to go out and find the funds in order to make the fields better. But maintenance of the fields, dragging and cutting, that's all done by the city, and they normally keep a pretty steady schedule for that, as well as picking up the garbage and cleaning the bathrooms. That's all maintained by them.
If we had no facility, we had to hire folks to do all of the maintenance that the city provides us. Simple things like emptying the trash on a regular basis, taking care of the restrooms. We didn't speak about that earlier, but indoor restroom facilities are rare. Any other outdoor facility you go to, you rarely see outdoor facilities. Young girls are asked to use porta potties. So if we had to maintain all of that on our own, our prices would be at least doubled. Right now we're able to offer a full opportunity for a young lady to play softball for the course of the season for around $100. It would probably be at least double. Having
Colonial Park available to the youth of our community has also contributed to their success in later life.
We're very proud of the fact that when they were in Akron this year in the state championship game, every single girl that was announced coming out to the field to start that game that was on the roster played in our program at some point. Many of them, as they get to a certain level, go out and play on true select and travel teams where some of these kids travel all over the country, but every single kid on that roster started their softball introduction here in Lebanon Fast Pitch. So that's huge, and we're very proud of that.
For Coach Tony Tedesco, Colonial Park has helped solidify his sense of community in a town that he's called home for only 4 years.
Because no matter where I go, I see somebody that I've coached, or I've seen a parent that I've had some sort of interaction with when it comes to playing sports. It's kind of nice. You go to Kroger's and you see somebody you know.
Links to the Lebanon Youth Baseball and Softball programs can be found on the City of Lebanon's webpage at www.lebanonohio.gov. If you want more information on the Memorial Tree Walk program, you can check out our website or pick up a brochure at the Lebanon City Building at 50 South Broadway. If you're interested in walking the trails in Colonial Park, Dave Ware has some advice for you.
It's very helpful to have a pair of binoculars for a couple of reasons. Animals are generally pretty flighty and they don't want to be encroached on, so they stay at some distance. And if you can pull them in with a good pair of binoculars and get a look at them before they disappear, yeah, that's an advantage to you. Also, it's always nice to stay on the trails and not wander off like I started out in this park before I knew there were trails, so that you don't trample the wildflower beds in the soft soil and compact it. So the binoculars help you see things off the trail a little bit of a distance, bring it in, you can identify what it is without walking right up to it. And other than that, I would say watch the weather. If it's been a time of precipitation, wear some waterproof footing, some boots. You might even want to walk around in the creek a little bit if you're going to explore, and you don't want to get your shoes wet, so you want to have some waterproof boots. I would say in the summer when it's a little warmer, you might want to bring some insect protection. That's basic advice for coming into any park and getting into the woods.
Dave can also recommend a few books that would help you understand what you will find along the trails.
I have a bird guide that's called The Birds of Ohio. And so it's written by Jim McCormick, who's a naturalist for the Ohio Department of Natural Resources. It's a very good guide, and it covers just the birds you're going to see that are residents of Ohio or which migrate through Ohio in the spring and the fall. So that's a good bird guide. There's a fossil guide too called Fossils of Ohio. It'll tell you about fossils in all sorts of locations in Ohio, including our Ordovician area here. And I like, for wildflowers, I have a book written by the local biologist Bob Henn, who's a friend of mine, called Wildflowers of Ohio. And like the bird book, it just features flowers that you're going to find underfoot right here.
It's wonderful. This is in the midst of 22,000 people, and you look around and you don't see any other buildings. You see nothing but trees. And I've been up here when there's deer out all around the field and this type of thing, and nature. And
the parks are here to improve our quality of life. And my quality of life has improved anytime I get away from my chores, get away from my yard work. If you're going to school, you can get away from your homework a little bit, clear your head. You can stand here like we are and listen to the red-eyed vireo singing overhead. Sometimes you can hear the creek babbling over the rocks in the stream bed. It's just therapeutic and relaxing. I've been known to sit on a log and just listen to the birds and the water go by and could almost fall asleep. It gets me out of my usual realm of things that I worry about, and it helps me get back to something serene and peaceful and calming.